So you asked me before we left, when LSU beat Arkansas, Blake, are we in a dynasty run with Jay Johnson? We were staring in the face before we all went to Omaha or watched the College World Series. If Jay Johnson were to win, that LSU was going to win 2 of the last 3 national titles. And it begged the question, always would be, is if Jay's able to pull this off, if this team is able to pull it off, and you have guys like Bear Jones who won his 2nd national title. You have a guy like Josh Pearson who won his 2nd national title. You have a guy like Chase Shores who won his 2nd national title at LSU in 3 years. And the list goes on and on and on and on. You ask yourself the honest question, well, should we continue to expect this? And guys, now that you've won the national title, there are a couple of things that we got to make sure that we talk about here. Number one, there's always and will forever be a aura around LSU baseball, a things that you got to do, you must do. You know, Paul Mainieri won a national title in 2009. He got to Omaha a couple of times. He got back to the finals in 2017, and they lost to Florida. And when the end of his career started to come at LSU, it was not living up to the pinnacle of what Skip Bertman had built. You know that, and I know that. And quite honestly, I know that he, quote unquote, retired, but he didn't really retire because I think we all know by now that he was pushed out. And then Scott Woodward did what Scott Woodward does. And I know some of you will say, well, Blake, what about Brian Kelly? Well, under Scott Woodward at LSU, by the way, just throwing this out there, well, he did go hire 3 coaches that have won national titles at LSU. Jay Johnson's won 2, Kim Mulkey's won 1, and Jay Clark's won 1. So I understand your football frustration, but Scott Woodward kind of needs a little bit of credit here for what he's done in bringing in Jay Johnson. But the question becomes, are you looking and staring a dynasty for LSU baseball in the face? And there's a couple of things to talk about with that. Like, number one, when I look at LSU, it always is going to start up top. Jay Johnson is the best head coach in college baseball. After winning a 2nd national title in 2 out of the last 3 years, it's not debatable. Now, there was a theory and a thought by some when we went into Auburn and lost and got swept, when we went into Texas and lost 2 out of 3 to the Longhorns. Man, maybe this, I don't know if we can go into, not only do I not think we can win a national title, I don't even know if we can make it to Omaha if we get against a hot team and we play on the road if we got to get there. But every single weekend, every single week, this team kept responding and kept being consistent. And guys, quite honestly, at home, they were absolutely dominant. 35-5 at home, or 30-5 at home this season. Absolutely dominant. By the way, one of those losses came to Tennessee. One of those losses came to Arkansas. And the only reason probably Tennessee's not it was not in Omaha is because, well, they had to go through Arkansas, who you beat twice in Omaha to do it. You went up against a team in Omaha too, by the way, in Arkansas, that more than likely on quote-unquote paper was more talented than you, and you beat them 4 times and playing them in 5. But when you look at a dynasty, you always got to look and start up top, the guy that runs it. And when you look at Jay Johnson getting to Omaha 4 out of the last 8 years, 4 out of the last 8 full seasons that he's been a head coach, he's been to Omaha. That's 50%. Of those 4 times, 2 of them he has won national titles in. So when I go up against Brandon Walker on Twitter from Barstool Sports and we're debating on Twitter, well, who's the best? And he goes, well, Tony Vitello won it all or built Tennessee. Well, Nick Saban didn't build Alabama. Bear Bryant did. So the question becomes, is Skip Bertman to Bear Bryant what Nick Saban could be to Jay Johnson? Are there similarities? Because, guys, don't mistake it. Never mistake what LSU baseball is. You are the Alabama of baseball. You are the Kentucky or Duke of basketball. When you look at baseball, LSU is the pinnacle. It is the star. It is the mainstay of what everybody strives to be. And even some of these little Rudy Poo-ass little having baseball accounts that are like, we want the Chanticleers to win. Oh, we want the Chanticleers to win. You are the pinnacle. And this weekend, not only this weekend, but against Arkansas, when you look at the games and those teams see the front of your jersey and they see Tigers, and they can't close out a game, or they make a wrong play, or a guy that hasn't lost a game all year, and Jacob Morrison gets absolutely rocked by a 9-hole hitter, and Chris Stanfield, and Derek Carriel, the special freshman, comes up with a 2 RBI clutch single to blow it wide open in the 4th in game 2 for you to win a national title. It always is going to start up top. Guys, I do think that you're in the good old days. I do think that you're looking at a coach that in 2023 did it with a guy like Paul Skeens. But he didn't have a guy like Grant Taylor, by the way, who got called up to the Chicago White Sox. Guys, the second best pitcher on your team was hurt. Ty Floyd was a first-round pick by the Cincinnati Reds. Dylan Cruz. We all remember the 23 season. Then you turn around 2 years later and Jay Johnson's winning in a completely different way. He's winning in a way with elite defense and pitching where, guys, you use 3 pitchers in a College World Series final with Cade Anderson, with Anthony Ianson, and Chase Shores. Guys, of those 4 out of the last 8 seasons, Jay Johnson in the last 2 of them, and him getting to Omaha, has won national titles. And I think that you are staring down the barrel if Jay and this coaching staff, and I think keeping Josh Jordan is a massive part of this. A massive part of this. Guys, you are. You are on the dynasty run. You know, when I was younger, I think of the New England Patriots, and when Tom Brady won his second national title, won his second Super Bowl. I think of Patrick Mahomes right now, and when he's winning the Super Bowls that he's done, that everybody calls them a dynasty. Well, guys, so are you. So are you. The reason, though, that for me, that I feel like that you are going to be in this dynasty run is for one reason and one reason only. Jay Johnson's never going to sleep. Now, guys, that's not to say that you're not going to have an off year. It's not to say that you're going to go to Omaha every single year. I think Jay can do that. I'm not saying that you will, though. And that's not what dictates you being an outright dynasty. Jay Johnson's not even 50 years old, but what makes him the best coach outside of the wins, outside of winning 2 of the last 3 national titles, is he is the most elite recruiter in college baseball right now. No one works harder than that man. No one. No one works harder than them. And you look at him and say, well, Blake, I mean, you know, I don't know about these situations. Guys, you can't question him right now. He won his second national title with a team that didn't have a Paul Skeens. And, you know, there was a narrative, man, Jay Johnson is like kind of like Ed Orgeron when he didn't have Joe Burrow, a.k.a. Paul Skeens, he couldn't win a national title. Well, he did it again. Oopsies. So when you talk about the good old days and you talk about everything that this man does, he's always reloading. It's not rebuilding. Like, for an example, now in baseball, this is a lot different because some of these kids are not going to make it to campus. But a good buddy and a great friend of the show and a guy that we saw in Omaha, and he sponsors the show, and Tyler Alexander sent this to me today, and it was something when I was doing notes for the show, I'm like, damn, you're right, because we were already talking about recruiting. Like, what about having 9 of the top 100 high school players signed to LSU? Now, I don't think that all 9 of those top 100 players are going to be on campus. What if 4 or 5 of them are? You know, what if you have a situation that replicates itself like Cade Anderson, who was the number 1 player and number 1 pitcher in the state a couple of years ago? He didn't have a great freshman year. because he might be the first overall pick in this year's draft. Is that William Schmidt? Is that Kason Evans? What does Maverick Rizzi turn into? Does Jacob Myers come back? I don't know any of those questions. Here's what I know. You have a crap load of talent, and you're constantly reloading and not rebuilding. When you're in a dynasty, and you're in a dynasty, especially in college, and especially in baseball, recruiting is the lifeblood that fuels the dreams of champions. It fuels the dreams of champions. So whether it is Nick Saban, whether it is Calipari, whether it is Krzyzewski, whether it is whoever it is, whether it is Bill Belichick, regardless of the dynasties or whatever sport, they always brought in the talent that they knew that they could develop, mold, and get them to the title. You know, Jay was in his postgame and said, listen, our motto to start the season was toughen together. And he was asked, well, Jay, what was the similarities of why this team and the 2023 team won national titles? And without missing a beat, he said character. And what we would call it as fans, culture. See, what's interesting about culture is it doesn't come up on our show. It doesn't come up in the national media perspective when we talk about the best head coaches in any sport. You don't think Nick Saban or Skip Bertman, whoever the coach is, didn't have the elite culture for their time and what they did in their process. They do. You know, what's funny about this is in the argument with Brandon Walker from Barstool on Twitter, we saw a coach win a national title here, but he didn't bring LSU back to the promised land in reference to where they needed to be. See, not any man can come into a situation, even in a place like LSU, and do what Jay is doing. No one works harder. In a minute, we're going to talk about some of these players in the portal that you need to keep your eyes on. And there's going to be a lot more tomorrow, and there's going to be a lot more Thursday that we're going to discuss of keeping your eyes on and what Jay Johnson, Nate Yeske, and Josh Jordan and Wanaka and that entire staff and what they're attacking. They're already going back after it to go and get another one. Jay Johnson is literally saying some of the things that we heard a guy like Saban say. Hey, what do you do now? Well, guess what? They're having a coaching meeting literally today about how they're attacking the portal, what guys, kids are and aren't going to be coming to campus. And as an example, as Jay said in one of the postgame show, I think it was after Arkansas, when he was talking about Nate Yeske and you being a pitcher, look at the arm talent that they've developed at LSU. You've led the country in strikeouts the last 2 years. And he was talking about a kid in the portal that didn't come here and went somewhere else. A&M. But regardless of that, they are doing something that is elite. If you're asking me, yes, I think you're in a dynasty run. Why would you not assume right now that you are? Now, again, that doesn't mean that you don't win one. Like we don't have a dynasty. We don't win another one next year. You got to go 3 out of the last 4 years. That's not how college baseball works. It's not how baseball works in general. It's not how it works in general. I do think it's the toughest sport to win back-to-back, much less win 2 of the last 3. And guys, taking the lumps that you did in 2023 so that Stephen Milam can move over to short and be able to be fierce in turning the double play to win you a natty. Coming up clutch, a guy seeing a vision and character about a guy, guys, quite honestly, a shortstop that's 5'8", 175 pounds, who quite honestly and was the best shortstop in the College World Series tournament. Character won the national title. But I got to give Jay this. You still had elite talent. You know, we looked at Arkansas and said to ourselves, you looked at Coastal Carolina or whoever you looked at and said, man, they got a lot of really good talent. They're really dangerous. Guys, you had Cade Anderson. You had Anthony Ianson. You had Bear Jones. You had Ethan Fry. You had Derek Curiel. You had Chris Stanfield. You had Jake Brown. You had Luis Hernandez. You had Ashton Larson, who was on the bench, who, guys, quite honestly, is still very talented, and he couldn't play. He couldn't play. Because they were still ultimately talented, and they were the most talented team. They were the most talented team because they're the national title winners. Raw talent does not always win you championships, but culture, talent, and having a coach that can develop and recruit at an elite level does. And that is 1,000% what you have in Jay Johnson right now. You know, before Jay Johnson won his second national title, if any of you are frequent into this show, there was something that I always said, and something that I always said even in 2023, pull the film. Please pull the film. Even though Jay Clark, even though Kim Mulkey, even though so many other coaches on that campus had massive amount, even Brian Kelly had massive amounts of success. Blake Ruffino in this show always said one thing: there's no coach on that LSU campus that is better than Jay Johnson. Do you believe it now? Because you better. Now, you can talk about, well, Blake, that is LSU baseball. Yes, it is. And one final thing I will say to this before we get to a couple comments here. The man's mentor is Skip Bertman. And it doesn't come without Skip, in his own right, being humble enough, having the humility to saying, I just want this place to succeed. I love Jay Johnson. My legacy is my legacy. I started college, what is today college baseball, to where people love it the amount that they do. And him putting, which some people would not, I don't think Nick Saban would be humble enough if a coach came to Alabama that he would help him out enough to be able to win national titles and make a run like he did at the University of Alabama. I don't think he would do that. The humility. The humility. Because when you win 2 out of the last 3 national titles, every paddle on your canoe has got to be rowing in the same direction. Culture. One final thought here. When I look at this season, and I look at it as a whole, and recapping the season, which we'll do a lot of, and I really want to kind of recap the season later this week and kind of get a lot of thoughts down and think about it a lot. But we were all there for the Auburn sweep, the only blimp on that team's radar. We were there for Texas because you had 12 players that were on your team last year. You had 10 players from high school. You had 10 players from the portal that you brought in. And that dude, Jay, brought them together as a team that maybe they, from a on-paper talent perspective, maybe they weren't the most talented. But damn, they had a hard way of not showing that they weren't. Cade Anderson going out there and being the most elite pitcher in college baseball. Liam Doyle, my ass. Liam Doyle, my ass. And I will tell you this in closing out. Jay Johnson needs your help. And you know what I mean. From an NIL perspective, he needs it. Because nobody works harder in the fall than him. Nobody. Nobody is doing the things necessary for things to get done to get the elite talent here to win 2 out of the 3 last national titles. Jay has taken a lot of criticism. And you know what? I will share this, and I probably will get in trouble for it, but oh well. I'll take the bullet. There was a press conference 2 months ago where Jay Johnson came out and was fielding questions after a loss. And Jay came out and said, why do I always feel like I'm coming to these press conferences like I'm having to justify that we have a really damn good team? Because you got a lot to reload and rebuild on. You got a lot of talent, but you're losing a lot of talent too, and a lot of experience at that. But here's what I know. Jay Johnson's going to get back there. Knock on wood that something bad doesn't happen. He's going to get back there because as soon as he got the second one, he was hungry for the third. And a lot of times coaches and us as general, whether you like, if some of you run a business, if some of you are do sales and you get comfortable about the money you make and you start coasting, he doesn't want to coast. He's wired different. And you got to love him for it. You 1,000% got to love him for it. All right. I see the debate in the chat about, do I think Jay Johnson will be better than Skip? I see y'all talking about it. Guys, here's what I would say. If Jay did get to a third one and won a third one, you would have to have a conversation about the time. But listen, there's no way humanly possible that Jay would allow that comparison to happen. He would probably hate it. He'd probably despise it. Guys, no one's been a bigger mentor to Jay Johnson than Skip Bertman. Nobody. The real question becomes, guys, do you have the baseball version of Skip Bertman? Again, do you have the football version of Nick Saban right now? You very well could. All right. Let's get to a couple comments here. Dim Tigers on YouTube with a $5 super chat says Brandon Walker came out and said today that because Jay won 2 in the last 3, Jay has to be the best in college baseball. No, he did not. Did he really? Please tell me y'all are joking. I don't watch Barstool. It's just not my cup of tea, man. It's not my cup of tea. Did he really? Y'all, did he really do that? Did he really do that? Goodness gracious. Frank Castle with a $5 super chat says Jay needs to do more in the portal or it'll be predictable 2024 season repeat. Obviously, I'm giving them time there. Look, we're going to talk about portal next. They're on it. They're on it. And listen, I will tell you this. There is going to be growing pains next year. But here, look, we will get to this when the time comes of guys leaving and guys going. Ethan Fry's got to make a decision. Chris Stanfield's got to make a decision. I don't think Chase Shores is coming back. Why would he? Guys, he's throwing 100. I mean, listen, I could go on a whole rant and rampage on how people and A&M fans. By the way, show of hands in the chat. Did y'all see the debate or the A&M fans going crazy saying Nate Yesky stinks? Y'all, brother, what are we doing? Chase Shores, end of discussion. We got to give players time. Like, look at Chase Shores. Guys, Chase Shores came into every game in Omaha outside of the complete game thrown by Cade Anderson. Chase Shores dominated, dude.